Improving my English has been a long and rewarding journey. When I first started learning English, I realized that it would take time, effort, and patience to reach a point where I could understand and use the language confidently. Over the years, I have tried many different methods and strategies to improve my skills in speaking, reading, writing, and listening. Each of these areas is important in learning a language, and I learned that focusing on all of them helped me become better at English overall. In this essay, I will talk about how I improved my English by practicing daily, using various tools and resources, and being consistent in my learning efforts. The first thing I realized when I started learning English was the importance of vocabulary. Words are the building blocks of any language, and without knowing enough words, it is difficult to express thoughts and ideas clearly. So one of the first steps I took was to build my vocabulary. I began by learning a few new words every day. I used flashcards, which helped me memorize new words easily. I would write the word on one side of the card and the meaning on the other side. Then I would review the cards regularly to make sure I remembered the words. Another tool that helped me was a mobile app designed for language learners. The app had a feature that taught me new words every day and quizzed me on their meanings. It was a fun way to learn, and I could practice any time, even when I was on the go. However, learning new words was not enough. I quickly realized that it was important to understand how to use these words in sentences. Words often have different meanings depending on the context, so I started reading books, newspapers, and articles to see how native English speakers used certain words. This helped me not only understand the meanings of words better, but also learn how to construct sentences naturally. Reading became one of my favorite ways to improve my vocabulary. I would make a list of new words I encountered while reading and later look them up in a dictionary. This way I expanded my vocabulary and learned how to use those words in different situations. In addition to vocabulary, grammar was another important area I needed to focus on. At first, English grammar seemed complicated to me because there were so many rules, and sometimes the rules had exceptions. I often got confused with verb tenses, sentence structure, and prepositions. To improve my grammar, I studied grammar books and did exercises to practice different aspects of the language. One book that helped me a lot was a basic English grammar guide that explained the rules clearly and provided examples. I would go through the book, chapter by chapter, completing the exercises at the end of each section. I also found online resources that offered grammar lessons and quizzes. These resources were very helpful because they gave me immediate feedback on whether my answers were correct or not. As I practiced more, I began to notice my grammar improving. I became more comfortable with using different tenses correctly, and my sentences became clearer and more accurate. I also realized that paying attention to grammar in the things I read and heard helped reinforce what I was learning. For example, when reading a news article or listening to a podcast, I would pay attention to how the speaker or writer used grammar in their sentences. This helped me understand how the grammar rules I had studied applied in real-life situations. Over time, I became more confident in my grammar skills. although I knew there was always room for improvement. Speaking was one of the most challenging parts of learning English for me. I was often nervous about making mistakes when speaking to others, and this made me hesitate to start conversations. However, I knew that in order to improve my speaking skills, I needed to practice regularly. I decided to set small goals for myself. For example, I would try to speak in English for a few minutes each day, even if it was just to myself. I would describe what I was doing, talk about my day, or express my thoughts in English. This helped me become more comfortable with forming sentences in my head and speaking them out loud. I also found language exchange partners online, which allowed me to practice speaking with native English speakers. These conversations were very helpful because I could hear how English was spoken naturally and get feedback on my own speaking. My language partners were patient and encouraged me to keep practicing, even when I made mistakes. Over time, I noticed that my speaking became more fluent, and I was able to express my thoughts more easily. I also started to feel less nervous about speaking in English, and this gave me more confidence to engage in conversations. One thing that really helped improve my speaking was watching English movies and TV shows. By listening to how the characters spoke, I learned how native speakers used expressions, idioms, and slang. I also paid attention to their pronunciation and intonation. After watching a scene, I would try to repeat what the characters said, mimicking their pronunciation and tone. This practice helped me improve both my pronunciation and my ability to speak naturally. I also started to pick up common phrases and expressions that I could use in everyday conversations. Listening is another important skill when learning English. At first, I found it difficult to understand native English speakers, especially when they spoke quickly or used unfamiliar slang. To improve my listening skills, I started listening to English podcasts and audiobooks. I chose topics that interested me, which made the listening practice more enjoyable. In the beginning, I would listen to short segments and replay them if I didn't understand something. Gradually, I began to understand more and more without needing to replay the audio. I also watched English videos with subtitles. This helped me connect the spoken words with their written form, making it easier to understand what was being said. Over time, my listening skills improved, and I could follow along with conversations and audio recordings more easily. I found that the more I listened to English, the more familiar I became with different accents and speech patterns. This made it easier to understand people in different situations, whether it was watching the news, talking to someone, or listening to a lecture. Listening practice also helped me improve my pronunciation as I learned how certain words and sounds were supposed to be pronounced. Writing was another area where I wanted to improve my English. I knew that writing regularly would help me practice grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure. I started by writing short paragraphs on different topics. Sometimes I would write about my day, my thoughts, or something interesting I had read. I would then review my writing to check for any grammar or spelling mistakes. At first, I made a lot of mistakes, but over time, I noticed that my writing became more accurate and my sentences more complex. To further improve my writing, I started keeping a journal where I wrote in English every day. This practice helped me become more comfortable with expressing my thoughts in writing, and it also gave me an opportunity to practice using new vocabulary and grammar rules. I also found that reading more helped improve my writing. By reading a variety of materials, I learned how different authors structured their sentences and organized their ideas. This gave me a better sense of how to write clearly and effectively. One thing that helped me a lot was getting feedback on my writing. I would share my writing with friends who were more proficient in English, and they would give me suggestions for improvement. Sometimes they would point out mistakes that I hadn't noticed, and other times they would suggest better ways to phrase my sentences. This feedback was very helpful because it showed me where I needed to improve and gave me a clearer idea of what I was doing well. In addition to practicing the 4 main skills, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, I also tried to immerse myself in English as much as possible. I surrounded myself with English by watching English TV shows, listening to English music, and reading English books. And this constant exposure to the language helped me become more familiar with how it was used in different contexts. I also tried to think in English whenever possible. For example, when I was doing something, I would try to describe it in my head in English. This helped me become more comfortable with forming sentences in English, and over time, it became more natural for me to think in the language. Another thing that helped me improve my English was setting specific goals. For example, I would set a goal to learn a certain number of new words each week or to complete a grammar exercise every day. Setting goals helped me stay motivated and gave me a clear direction in my learning. It also allowed me to track my progress and see how much I was improving over time. As I reached my goals, I would set new ones to keep challenging myself. One of the most important things I learned during my journey of improving English is the importance of consistency. Learning a language is not something that happens overnight. It requires regular practice and dedication. I made it a point to practice English every day, even if it was just for a short period of time. Whether I was learning new vocabulary, practicing speaking with a language partner, or listening to a podcast, I tried to make English a part of my daily routine. This consistency helped me make steady progress and kept me motivated to continue learning. In conclusion, improving my English has been a long but rewarding process. By focusing on vocabulary, grammar, speaking, listening, and writing, I was able to make significant progress in my language skills. I used a variety of tools and resources such as flashcards, apps, books, and online language exchanges to help me practice and improve. I also made sure to practice regularly and stay consistent in my learning efforts. Although I still have more to learn, I feel much more confident in my ability to use English, and I know that with continued practice I will continue to improve. Improving my English has been a very long and ongoing process, one that continues to this day. When I first started learning the language, I had no idea how complex and intricate English could be. It's not just about learning new words or memorizing grammar rules. It's about understanding how everything fits together to create meaning. I quickly realized that mastering English would require time, effort, and consistency, and that I would need to approach the task with patience and a clear plan in mind. In the beginning, my English knowledge was very basic. I knew only a few common phrases and words, and my understanding of grammar was almost non-existent. My goal was to become fluent in English so that I could communicate effectively in both personal and professional situations. I knew that English was a global language, and improving my skills in it would open many doors for me, both in terms of career opportunities and the ability to connect with people from different cultures. However, I also understood that becoming proficient in English would take time and dedication, and that I would need to approach the process step by step. The first major area that I focused on when I began improving my English was vocabulary. Vocabulary is the foundation of any language because, without words, it's impossible to express ideas or communicate effectively. I realized early on that I needed to learn a wide range of words in order to be able to talk about different subjects, describe situations, and understand what others were saying. To start expanding my vocabulary, I created a daily routine where I learned a few new words every day. I used flashcards to help with memorization, writing the new word on one side and its definition or meaning on the other side. I would then review these flashcards throughout the day whenever I had a spare moment, whether I was waiting for the bus or having a break. In addition to using flashcards, I also found a few mobile apps designed specifically to help language learners improve their vocabulary. These apps were extremely helpful because they introduced me to new words daily, along with example sentences that showed how the words were used in context. This was crucial because understanding a word's meaning isn't enough. You also need to know how to use it correctly in a sentence. The apps I used had quizzes that tested me on my vocabulary, and they helped reinforce what I had learned by making the learning process fun and engaging. After a few weeks of studying new words every day, I began to feel more comfortable with my expanding vocabulary. However, I also quickly realized that learning words in isolation wasn't very effective in the long run. Words tend to have different meanings or nuances depending on how they're used in context. So I started reading books, articles, and newspapers to see how native speakers use these words in real-life situations. Reading helped me gain a deeper understanding of not only the meaning of words, but also how they fit into sentences and how sentence structure worked in English. I made it a habit to jot down any new or unfamiliar words I encountered while reading, and I would later look them up in a dictionary. This process helped me steadily build a more robust and practical vocabulary. One of the biggest challenges I faced was learning English grammar. Grammar is like the skeleton of a language. It holds everything together and gives structure to what you're trying to say. Without a good understanding of grammar, it's difficult to communicate effectively, even if you know a lot of vocabulary. When I first started, I found English grammar to be very confusing. There were so many rules to remember, and it seemed like there were exceptions to every rule. For example, understanding when to use different verb tenses or how to correctly use prepositions was a major challenge for me. To improve my grammar, I decided to take a systematic approach. I bought a few grammar books and studied them carefully. Each book focused on different aspects of grammar, such as verb tenses, sentence structure, or the use of articles and prepositions. I would go through each chapter, read the explanations, and then complete the exercises at the end. The exercises were very helpful because they allowed me to practice using the rules I had just learned, and they gave me immediate feedback on what I was doing right and where I needed to improve. In addition to using grammar books, I also found online resources that offered grammar lessons and quizzes. Many of these websites were interactive, which made learning grammar more engaging and fun. The quizzes helped me test my understanding of the material and reinforce the rules I had studied. I also started paying close attention to how native speakers used grammar when I listened to them speak or read something they had written. This helped me understand how grammar was used in real-life situations, and it gave me a better sense of how to apply the rules I was learning. Over time, I became more comfortable with grammar and more confident in my ability to use it correctly, although I knew that there was always room for improvement. One of the most difficult aspects of learning English for me was speaking. At first, I was very shy and nervous about speaking English, especially in front of native speakers. I was afraid of making mistakes and embarrassing myself, which made me hesitant to start conversations. However, I knew that the only way to get better at speaking was to practice regularly, so I set small goals for myself. I started by talking to myself in English for a few minutes each day. I would describe what I was doing, talk about my thoughts, or even pretend I was having a conversation with someone. This helped me become more comfortable with forming sentences in my head and speaking them out loud. After a while, I felt ready to start practicing speaking with other people. I found language exchange partners online, which was a great way to practice speaking in a more relaxed and low-pressure environment. My language partners were patient and supportive, and they gave me helpful feedback when I made mistakes. These conversations helped me build confidence in my speaking abilities, and over time I became more fluent and more comfortable expressing myself in English. One thing that really helped me improve my speaking skills was watching English language movies and TV shows. Listening to how the characters spoke and mimicking their pronunciation helped me sound more natural when speaking English. I also learned a lot of common phrases, idioms, and slang from watching movies, which made my speech sound more authentic and less textbook-like. Improving my listening skills was another key part of my English learning journey. At first, I found it difficult to understand native speakers, especially when they spoke quickly or used unfamiliar words or expressions. To improve my listening skills, I started listening to English podcasts and audiobooks. I chose topics that interested me, which made the listening practice more enjoyable. In the beginning, I found it helpful to listen to short segments and replay them if I didn't understand something. Gradually, I was able to follow along more easily and understand more without needing to replay the audio. Watching English videos with subtitles also helped me a lot. By reading the subtitles while listening to the spoken words, I was able to make connections between the sounds and the words on the screen. This helped me improve both my listening comprehension and my reading skills at the same time. As my listening skills improved, I found that I could understand different accents and speech patterns more easily, which made it easier for me to communicate with people from different English-speaking countries. Writing was another important area I wanted to improve. Writing regularly not only helped me practice grammar and vocabulary, but it also helped me organize my thoughts and communicate them clearly. I started by writing short paragraphs on different topics, and I would then review my writing to check for grammar or spelling mistakes. In the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes, but over time I noticed that my writing became more accurate and my sentences more complex. To further improve my writing, I kept a journal where I wrote in English every day. This practice helped me become more comfortable with expressing my thoughts in writing, and it also gave me an opportunity to use the new words and grammar rules I had learned. I found that reading more also helped improve my writing. By reading a variety of books, articles, and other materials, I was exposed to different writing styles and learned how to structure sentences and organize ideas more effectively. One thing that really helped improve my writing was getting feedback from others. I would share my writing with friends or teachers who were more proficient in English, and they would give me suggestions for improvement. Sometimes they pointed out mistakes that I hadn't noticed, and other times they suggested better ways to phrase my sentences. This feedback was incredibly helpful because it showed me where I needed to improve and gave me practical advice on how to make my writing better. In addition to practicing the 4 main skills, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, I also tried to immerse myself in English as much as possible. I surrounded myself with English by watching English language TV shows, listening to English music, and reading English books. This constant exposure to the language helped me become more familiar with how it was used in different contexts. I also tried to think in English whenever possible. For example, when I was doing something, I would try to describe it in my head in English. This helped me become more comfortable with forming sentences in English, and over time it became more natural for me to think in the language. Another thing that helped me improve my English was setting specific goals. For example, I would set a goal to learn a certain number of new words each week or to complete a grammar exercise every day. Setting goals helped me stay motivated and gave me a clear direction in my learning. It also allowed me to track my progress and see how much I was improving over time. As I reached my goals, I would set new ones to keep challenging myself and pushing my English skills to the next level. One of the most important things I learned during my journey of improving English is the importance of consistency. Learning a language is a gradual process that requires regular practice and dedication. I made it a point to practice English every day, even if it was just for a short period of time. Whether I was learning new vocabulary, practicing speaking with a language partner, or listening to a podcast, I tried to make English a part of my daily routine. This consistency helped me make steady progress, kept me motivated to continue learning. In conclusion, my journey of improving English has been a long but rewarding one. By focusing on vocabulary, grammar, speaking, listening, and writing, I was able to make significant progress in my language skills. I used a variety of tools and resources such as flashcards, apps, books, and online language exchanges to help me practice and improve. I also made sure to practice regularly and stay consistent in my learning efforts. Although I still have more to learn, I feel much more confident in my ability to use English, and I know that with continued practice, I will continue to improve. Improving English is not something that happens overnight. It takes time, patience, and dedication. Each step of the process, whether it's learning new words, mastering grammar, or practicing speaking, is important in becoming more proficient in the language. The key is to stay motivated, set clear goals, and practice consistently. By doing this, anyone can improve their English skills and unlock new opportunities for communication, personal growth, and career advancement.